We're talking on Let's Talk Possibility tonight with Sonja and Mongezi about masterminding. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Let's Talk Possibility, the show where we talk about what's possible in the world. And today we want to explore what's possible when a group of people come together, all with a common purpose, and they work on harmony. What can actually happen? And I think there's some exciting examples. We were talking about Gandhi has been an example of what we call masterminding, when he got a group of 2 million people together. I think what's happening now with the Occupy Wall Street thing is happening all over the world. That's another example of it. We were talking about the internet's part of it. But also what happens sometimes when you just get together with your mates around a pizza or a coffee, whatever. So with me in the studio, is Sonja Kruse, otherwise known as the Ubuntu Girl, and Mongezi Mtati, otherwise known as the Word Starter. Sometimes he's a rock star too.
And also mostly the loudmouth, generally. Everywhere else, yeah.
The loud laugher.
Shut him up!
So Mongezi and Sonja joining me in studio tonight because we've actually had some experiences ourselves personally where we've been sitting around talking and something has just taken over the conversation. And we've just left there like really I've felt in awe of the information that came out of that conversation, what happens. And I know I'd been reading a bit about it, and when we had an experience, I went and actually read up a lot more about masterminding. But for those of you that are not too sure of the concept or what masterminding is, I think the father of masterminding, I don't know if you guys have read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Yes. I've skimmed through quite a bit of his stuff. To be honest, I haven't really sat down and read it.
It's an awesome book, and there's one whole chapter just around the mastermind, because he actually, from what I remember, is sat around a table and he imagined some of the great minds that he thought he would love to speak with. He imagined sitting around that table, and then he would pose a question, and then he would imagine how each person would answer that, and that's how he solved some of his problems. And anyway, in Think and Grow Rich, he defines the mastermind as, I'm going to read it here, the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. And that's actually, I think, as we've experienced, all the key elements. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, it started with a pizza for us. It was a friend of ours, Yolandi Rust. I think a lot of you are familiar with what she's doing. She's
in one of our shows.
Yeah,
first show actually. Yeah,
she's circumnavigating Africa on a motorbike. Shortly, she'll resume her journey. And we went to go and visit her at the restaurant she was working at. And it was actually Telana, Mo, and myself. And we were just sitting in, and I think we're big dreamers, and we're people we call ourselves possibility bar pushers. And we were sort of throwing out various concepts and ideas.
And challenges. And challenges. Well, that we were
challenging
facing
one another too.
And I think the other thing that led to that conversation is the consciousness, the awareness that we had at the time, because in many instances, I'm finding that when you talk to people about an issue, you always listen from the perspective of where you are and the things that you are open to at that given
time.
moment. And every answer seems to relate to that issue you're thinking about at the time. And all of us then we're thinking about completely different things, yet we came up with answers out of those conversations from what everybody else was saying.
Yes, I remember someone saying something, I almost had tears in my eyes because it's like, I needed that, thank you, I needed that piece of information, because we were talking about earlier how filters, we don't see information, but someone else has a different set of filters or different perspective, and then just the way they explain it or share. But there's also something about masterminding when we talked about it. So what happens is when the people that have similar interests and get together and there's harmony in that group and there's a purpose, it's almost that they call the mastermind, it's like another mind that is bigger than
the group sitting around that table
like
or
the sum of the
talking about that issue.
Gestalt. That mind that somehow develops from all those other minds together is more masterful, whatever, and we're able to just tap into another level of knowledge, and someone would just. So we've had moments where it's just the two of us, because you can mastermind just with two people, or with Gandhi that he did with 2 million people. But well, I just said something, I don't know what I said, it just like, I don't know where that came from, Sonja, but blah, 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 whatever I said to you, and you like, that's what you needed at that
because
moment.
That collective, I mean, that collective consciousness, that mastermind that we tap into would also explain why the same sort of idea springs up in different parts of the world from people who've never met each other, and that same idea definitely rises, because the one thing that's happening more and more around the world now is the idea of collective action.
Yes.
The idea of changing rules, or changing how governments operate, or changing how the rules are for the greater good of humanity. And that is definitely an idea that not only happens in Egypt, but it happens in the United States as well.
We were also asking earlier, just in preparation to the show, what would somebody like Gandhi have done if he had access to social media? Would he have used social media to his advantage, and to mobilize more people?
And I'm sure he would have, because he had a lot of
I mean, I partly agree. Yet at the same time, I also think that because it was an idea that was pertinent to humanity at the time, it connected that many people.
It would have mobilized people anyway.
It would have mobilized people anyway, because humanity always wants to equalize things, if you will. They want things to be fair for. We all want things to be fair for everyone.
But
he
managed
to mobilize people within India mostly. So maybe, thinking now with social media, we've become much more global. Yeah. We're able to now mobilize on a more global, because we can cross, oceans with social media. But yes, but what is needed then to mastermind? So besides, we've spoken about there's the definite purpose.
Can I ask a different question? Can I ask
you wouldn't
this
be
question?
Mo if you didn't.
Can I ask a different question? Before we probably go into, because Napoleon Hill definitely has ways by which he advises you can mastermind.
Yeah.
What occurred around that table on that day? Which things just spontaneously were there and favored that conversation to happen? What is it that happened that Sunday around the pizza, which caused that conversation without us even being conscious of it?
Until afterwards.
I think it's a deep desire to have an impact, to have a greater impact, rather than just impacting your own life, but taking your concepts and your visions and your dreams and having it impact more people, and being impacted by people with dreams and visions, because sometimes you're surrounded by people that don't allow themselves to dream. So maybe he was asking those questions from those people because they were also dreamers. And sometimes, so it's a vision, greater than...
And I think that's what connected us, because all four of us have a very strong vision that's greater than ourselves, and we're doing it, as we were saying, in different ways.
Yes.
One matchstick, the Ubuntu Girl, the Solo Adventure, and the Word Starter. It's very, very different expressions, but so what connects us, and that's what I said, there has to be something that connects everyone on that table, because that connection also, there was a level of harmony, a level of we get on really well.
Yes,
and there was respect.
And I think also there was also the openness, being open to getting answers from these people.
And
because
also answers you don't necessarily want to always
vulnerable,
hear.
So we were allowed ourselves to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But there's a deep-seated trust amongst us as well, which is also, I think, part of the whole package. I remember, Telana, when you and I were masterminding together, it was just one of those hysterical moments. We were making tea in the kitchen, and I was frustrated because at that point I had publishers approach me to publish the Ubuntu Girl book, and I wasn't sure that is what I wanted, because they wanted to make profit, and I didn't want to make profit. I just wanted to get this book out and share the book with as many people as possible. So I was becoming quite frustrated, and Telana was giving me advice, and I didn't necessarily want the advice that she gave me. But at one point she looked at me, and I was in tears, and she looked at me and she said something, and I looked at her and I said, "That's it, that's the answer." And then she couldn't remember what she'd said, and I couldn't remember what she'd said, but I had knowledge that came beyond what our words could say.
Yeah, and I remember just saying to you, I don't know where this comes from, but whatever I say. And I think that's it, as you're saying, when we have that harmony, that trust, that what's a common purpose or a similar interest, something that tied us together as a group, whether it was one-on-one or...
Now, what are the possibilities of that trust, that harmony, and all those elements that create that environment happening around a table with strangers?
And I think it's possible from all what I've been reading, because I call it like the formal masterminding. If the people are strangers, but they must be sitting around that table for a common reason. So if you have that something in common, it already creates a dynamic.
Yes.
From the people, and then so part of it is, I think, is you have to have this. It's whether it's explicit or unwritten, that rule of respect, and that we are going to, and their harmony. So we've had other experiences where we've intentionally tried to create it and it hasn't happened, because there's been a disharmony or something. Just people that needed to go or weren't able to be fully present. I think that was one of the other points I had, was the active participation. It's not something you can just sit there and wait and hope. You actually have to participate. You have to engage in the conversation. And I actually think there was a part where almost we sensed where the energy was going. We all would look at the next person, and that person would say something.
We knew who needed to speak, because it was kind of like what is that thing that the Africans hold up and it's your turn to speak?
It's like talking stick.
Microphone?
Yeah, talking stick.
Your turn now.
No, that's the wrong answer, Mai. You're supposed to help me here.
No, I don't know the stick.
But it's a talking stick. So it was kind of like we had that energy going, between us, and it was like we allowed it to flow, but we knew who needed to get what from the conversation, and we kind of followed it, and that was outside.
So to go back to your question, so you can have it more. You can have a formal set it up. Doesn't have to always just happen spontaneously. As long as you understand that concept, and everyone is willing to just sense, who's the next person, and there's not that competition of who's going to speak now. There's allowing, and when I think part of it is that the active participation is when you have a sense that you need to say something, it's just to say it, not to hold it back, because often when you hold it back, it's almost like the energy, the mastermind just stops, because it needs to flow through whatever set of perspective.
It was like we were dancing together.
Yeah.
So there was, and I think harmony, that's probably the
There's a bug flying around me. Yeah.
One of the major things for me in instances where I get into conversations that end up coming out with solutions from, it is in instances where it's mostly informal and mostly seemingly unfacilitated, yet they lead to a certain goal by the end of the conversation or by the middle of that conversation, and we tap into something greater than the conversation itself.
Yeah, we do. So I think it's very exciting, and that's some of the benefits, if you think about it. So the one benefit is, as you're saying, coming up with new solutions. I think it's a very creative process. You cannot not have a mastermind session and not leave away learning something new or having a new idea or that spark of creativity. And I think it's energizing. We definitely were on a buzz hours for days after that. It was very exciting.
And I think it was out of that same... It must have been a different instance. However, I suspect it might have been out of that same conversation that Sonja discovered that quotes about "we are the ones we've been looking for."
I think that was Aiden, because a few days later, think it's
So it
Eden.
definitely, because
The
it definitely
Hopi-
spreads.
Hopi
yes,
elders
yes,
taught
because
that
it
we are
definitely
the ones.
spreads much farther than that one conversation.
We actually realized it, and it didn't just spread further for us in that one conversation, but it was like the tables around us on that day and on subsequent days when we've had mastermind sessions, that people around us know that something is happening.
Yeah, there's an energy
There's
to
an
it.
energy to it that people are attracted to, and yeah, there's an open platform. It creates an open platform. Yeah, that draws people in.
For me, it's just so exciting, the possibilities. I mean, we've just experienced it with our little projects and what we're doing. But I was just thinking of Occupy Wall Street. If that's not a mastermind happening. So from what I understand, they're not too sure. And
Well, then maybe a good question is, if someone's wanting to start doing this with a group,
yes.
what factors do they need to bring in, or what do they need to do to initiate this in themselves and in other people?
Telana?
This is the formal one, no. So there needs to be a reason that everyone's coming together. So something that binds them.
Okay.
So, and I reckon even if it's just a mastermind, if that's the commonality,
Yes.
that might be enough. Could be a group of entrepreneurs or
So they need a shared purpose, effectively.
yeah. So and the reason you get together is for a specific purpose. So there's something that makes them like-minded. But it doesn't mean there's not diversity in the group, in their thinking. So they don't have to all think the same, but there's something that connects them.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, shared purpose. So they need a common goal. Is a more common way of putting it.
I suppose.
They need to be working towards something, but the fact that they're all
But
different
that's common, yeah.
is they're bringing different skills and are more likely than hopefully to get there.
Yeah, and different perspectives that allows them to say things in a different way or filter the information.
And another one, something else to add to that is also the fact that there needs to be openness. It needs to be open, and it needs to be open to other possibilities outside of that, because you are tapping into another energy. You are tapping into a collective source, if you will. For lack of a better description, you're tapping into a collective source, and that collective source will effectively, when you tap into it, will direct the conversation. That conversation and that purpose, the solution that comes out of that will be different.
Is try then avoid the negatives and seeing the fault initially. Is try embrace as much. So I'm trying to understand where you guys are coming from.
Great.
Embrace as much as you can.
So you've got to create a harmony in the group. So if someone's that's not going to work, then it naturally creates a disharmony. People like, it's so negative or whatever it is. So that kind of thinking may, but it may not if everyone is if they're looking for it. So you've got to somehow create that harmony that we're all getting on. There's no competition. There's no worrying that someone else is getting more attention than me.
So I'm thinking, I know Edward de Bono had some of those tools.
Yes,
and one of them was
hats.
that it's the hats one, and there was another one where you may not introduce anything negative. You can only say positives, and you have to say positives. And that was the thing, is it's the negatives inhibit the creativity of people because they get worried. And if everybody has to say something, something positive.
So you've got to leave your judgments at the door.
Yeah.
And it's also realizing that is a creative space. And it's interesting that Occupy Wall Street came up, and Occupy Wall Street doesn't define or describe itself as a solution. In fact, it's looking for a solution that people follow that cause. And it's not so much saying the solution is X or the solution is changing systems by doing this. It's still crowdsourcing the solution in different forums in different ways and starting that conversation. So it is masterminding in the sense that it continually taps into that collective consciousness.
Yeah, because there's 1,000 people there, and their common purpose is to try and change the system, even though they don't know the solution. And I know they've started discussions around what the solution could be. So I'm very excited about the possibilities that they may find, another solution. But it wouldn't happen if they didn't get together and have a common purpose and stand around and start discussions openly. And I know they're using the internet to vote on things and have forum discussions.
So it's not to worry about going in there with, we will definitely find a solution this time. It's been open
to whatever comes
what
out.
Happens.
It might just be knowledge, information, expanding your awareness, just being energized by the energy that goes around.
There's a whole, and it's not just in the social movements and Occupy Wall Street. Recently, I attended a peace summit in Cape Town. It was global, and it had 19 different delegates. And there is a company called Symphonia, and they actually do World Cafe style facilitating workshops. And I'm getting involved in a lot of diversity workshops.
Sorry, what's World Cafe style?
World Cafe style means that you have four people that are sitting at a table, and you have a piece of paper on the table.
Okay.
Like you've got layers of paper, and that's your tablecloth. And then people sit together, and you have one question, and the questions say, you have a series of questions, and they're all trying to get to a solution, but there isn't necessarily a solution in sight. It's just to get people to think. Then the four of you have 5 minutes to discuss that question and come up with a concept, and you have crayons, and you draw all over the tablecloth, and then when the 5 minutes is over, one person stands up and they say what they've sort of come up with together, what they've masterminded in effect together. Then one host stays at the table and 3 people move along, and this continues throughout the question. So by the end of it, when it's time over and all the questions are there, you have a collective concept that you then go and present to the whole room. And you've been part of the various groups. So you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, that's my word. I put that in at that table at that point. And then when you sit there, you feel high because you realize I've put my little seed there, and this is what's happened to it. So it
grows into something more.
It's about collaboration.
Everybody's contributed.
Everybody's contributed, and there wasn't, because you had crayons and pencils, and it was a creative process. There wasn't this you're wrong and I'm right. We have to create an answer together, and even though it might be somebody from Ghana whose life, I had no idea of what their lifestyle was like or anything, you get to find out what it is that how they envision the answer to it. And everybody, it was giving each other the space and the time and being present and listening and focusing and giving them that space and that time to articulate how it is that they felt. And that was what brought the magic on in those tables from people from 19 different countries.
Cool. So I think to run it, if you want to run it with a group of people, is to have those kind of guidelines. Like you're saying, so not keeping things positive. That it is a creative space that's about respect and harmony, and allowing people the time to talk and listening to them, being very present, being open. So I think there's part of you, if anyone wants to set it up, is you've got to talk the guidelines, and that might just be your first session. How are we going to manage this? What are the guidelines? How do we do it if we feel like someone's disrupting the harmony? How are you going to manage all that? And then just to let, come up with, you may start with a question that everyone wants answered, or someone may just bring a challenge they're experiencing. That's what we experienced. Someone said something, and then we just started bouncing ideas around and had that experience. So it's been intentional, I suppose, about why you're coming together with the purpose.
I've got another question here. I would imagine in these things, they're not always perfect. It doesn't always go well.
No, we've had experiences. We've tried really hard, and it's just not working today.
I'm just checking. So that is also okay. So if it's bad now, the next one might be great. And because it's bad now and not working, what do you then do at that point? Or do you just then go more relaxed and don't worry about it so much?
So if it's informal, it's just going to be, I think, one of those things. If it's formal, so you have someone who's like the facilitator, to me, understanding that you yourself, every individual needs to contribute. So if one person's having an off day, you're grumpy, you've had a fight with your partner on the way there, and you're just not quite there, it's not going to help the harmony and the coming together. So it is a bit of state management, learning to leave your stuff and to be present. I think being present, I think you nailed it on the head there. Is to really try and be there in that moment with everyone and being sick. In there's the Celestine prophecy. I don't know if you've heard of that
Her name does ring a bell, but
there's a whole lot of series, and in the second, third, and I think the very latest one came out this year. They talk a lot about group work, and there they actually talk about giving your energy to the person. And I think that it's like whoever, if it's Mongezi's turn to talk, everyone focuses on them, and that's the being present. It's almost like that person has a rush of energy, and then the clear-headedness that comes with that.
Cool. I just want to
so if you're not in sync, then it's hard to get that going.
Ask a question just to see if I can understand, or if I did understand it correctly. What you're saying, if you're having a bad day, maybe try. It's okay for you to step back, but then try help somebody else. Was that?
So you're asking how, like, sometimes when it doesn't work, so people come together, it doesn't work. It might be because there's one person in the group that's having an off day. It might be that there's a disharmony. Maybe two people are actually, in the middle of an argument. Maybe it's just something in the environment that's disturbing the focus.
It's also, I think, that in as much as it is a formal setting, it shouldn't feel formal. It shouldn't be about the formality, because when it is, our minds shut down. Well, my mind at least. And if it's open and it's open to creating, you would probably look at what it is that's causing that, and probably be open to more creativity, in the sense that because very much like brainstorming, nothing will be wrong that comes out of that. Nothing is necessarily wrong. Everything that is in that space is meant to be part of that space, because you're meant to be leading people to, or leading yourselves to exploration, to connecting with a higher consciousness, or with a consciousness that wouldn't have been there had you been on your own.
That's beautifully said. I think why we have so many mastermind instances is because obviously we connect well and we know each other quite well, but giving each other that space just to understand that it's okay. Telana might have an off day, and knowing each other well enough to realize that we can actually lift her up, because that's also a possibility. And because we're so diverse, because all of us in our group, there are probably 6 or 7, and we're constantly growing, there's more of us, we lift each other up, and we realize that it's because of our diverse skills that we can do that. So one person is maybe the mediator, and another person is maybe the pick-me-upper, and we all
cracks the jokes.
Yeah, so we kind of do that for one another, because we realize the magic that happens when we are all in harmony, and that is what we're supposed to do for one another, I think.
Cool, very cool.
So for me, maybe just to end off is on just one more comment about what is possible. Imagine if more and more groups of people were getting together and doing the cafe-style things, or the masterminding over coffee, or formally. Imagine if boardrooms turned into a mastermind session.
That's where I think that's where
possible in
that's
this
where
world.
Innovation. I mean, that's where innovation comes out. That's where and
collaboration, I think.
And definitely collaboration, innovation comes out of that. Coming up with other solutions that are not necessarily stipulated, because we always look for the solution that is written, or a solution that is fixed. But if you open that space to creativity, for creativity to occur, then different things will come out of that. Different answers will come out of that. And so it's definitely innovation, definitely different answers, definitely the space to collaborate more, and realizing that a person who wouldn't generally be able to contribute in that boardroom on a normal meeting might be called in, because they are part of the answer.
Yeah. And I think people own the answer more if you've contributed and helped create it.
Or own the non-answer more too.
Yeah,
I can't be in a boardroom because I just always cry at the end of these things. I become very emotional.
So if you would like to know some more about masterminding, you're welcome to get hold of us, or on our Twitter handle, LTP Possibility. Is that right?
Yeah, it is LT Possibility.
Yes, let's talk possibility. LT Possibility. And how can guys get hold of you, Mongezi?
I'm on Twitter, so it's at Mongezi, at MONGEZI on Twitter. www.mongezimtati.co.za.
Cool. And Sonja?
I'm gonna be tech and say Google me. So I'm the Ubuntu girl. The website is the Ubuntu, and it's UBUNTU girl.co.za, and it's the Ubuntu girl on Facebook and on Twitter as well.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Great. Well, our next show is on Monday, the 12th of December, and we hopefully going to have in studio a very young student who's doing phenomenal things. Very excited about that. But yeah, thanks guys for coming into the studio, and thank you, listeners, for joining the show. You can ask us more questions about masterminding on Twitter or post a comment on our Facebook.